On July the 1st, Mike Poore assumed the duties of superintendent of the Little Rock School District. He came to Little Rock from Bentonville, where he had been superintendent since 2011, and prior to that, had an extensive career as a teacher and administrator in the Colorado Public Schools. This, ladies and gentlemen, is his first policy speech as superintendent of the Little Rock School District. And he's doing town hall meetings, he's doing an extensive outreach program, but this is his first policy speech, and we are honored to have that speech and to welcome him here. Please welcome the superintendent of the Little Rock School District, Mike Poore.
Well, thank you very much. It is an honor to be in front of all of you. And the neat thing is that as I was seeing some of you filter by, I was seeing faces that I'm actually starting to be familiar with. And I don't quite have names all down. I have a bet with kids, and I'll try to establish this with all of you. I maybe put it in the hole here soon, but if I can't get your name right after 3 tries, I owe you a Coke. And so I hope that I will work on that and get better and better at it, of getting to meet you as a community. But it is nice to see a lot of folks that I've already met. I appreciate this opportunity to be here today with all of you and spend a little bit of time talking about the Little Rock schools and about public education. It's a passion that runs deep for me, and certainly it's the reason why I took this opportunity to be a part of your community, is to come down here and serve and be a part of the public schools. I'm coming off quite a weekend, I got to tell you that. On Friday, we had a big plan to have our family all gather, and my son was coming in from St. Louis, and Mary Ann's children were coming, and we were going to do a big, huge 4th of July thing. And Friday, I got up to Bentonville, was where we were all going to meet. And I told Mary Ann, let's go for a walk. So we went for a walk, came back 15 minutes later, and all of a sudden, I just didn't feel good. And about 15 more minutes later, I was like, I'm doubled over in pain. And then another 15 minutes, she told me to go lay down, and I came back. I said, we got to go to the emergency room. So I was in the emergency room, had a surgical operation Saturday. They jammed a kidney stone back into my kidney, which I've never heard of before. Well, this is a part of my honeymoon, okay? Remember, this is my honeymoon as the new superintendent of Little Rock. But so I've gotten jammed and stuck a little bit by some things that I didn't even anticipate. But and by the way, I need a urologist right now to take care of this procedure to get rid of these stones because they're still with me. And so if anyone by the end of the day can come up and let me know who can take care of me like soon, that would be very, very appreciated. Mary Ann my wife is here, and her mom, and I appreciate that they're both here. When I told Mary Ann, I said, guess what? I'm going to speak at the Clinton Center. And she goes, oh my God, really important people speak there. So I'll let that one sit for just a second, in terms of, what she said, and I thought, wow, yeah, this is a kind of a momentous deal. I got to admit, when I got here and I saw my picture out front, I shot it, sent it to my kids and my mom and my dad because this is kind of a big deal for me. And it's neat that we have this type of place to gather and then think, because I hope that's something that does happen for us today as we kind of tackle this. So the opportunity of us. I'm going to start off with a quote that you can see. I think it's kind of interesting when you think of this quote of, that there's not like some end destination that we're going to. When you think about, trying to build a school system and create a reform that really engages our students and makes it even a better place than what it currently is, it's an ongoing process. It doesn't end. And I think that's what Henry Ford's saying here. Now, I will tell you again that my mindset, again, a little bit of the difference between Mary Ann and I in terms of just how I look at things. I'm a little bit of a Disney guy. I'm a zippity-doo-dah, zippity. I'm very happy. I'm up in the 30,000-foot view looking down. My wife sometimes, and this is my expression, she's probably not going to like this, but can be a little bit of apocalypse now. Like, oh my God, Mike, what are you going to do? And so, she was probably more nervous about this speech than I was, but I am going to give her credit for helping me in a variety of different things of kind of putting this together. So my speech is entitled The Opportunity of Us, and I'm hoping that as you hear this, that it'll become a little bit of a call to action for you. That you will think of things as an individual that you personally may need to think about doing that maybe you haven't done before. Or maybe you're going to think of something that you can do collectively with a group of people to impact the children of this community. Because that's really what we need to do to continue to move forward. We can't sit on the sidelines. I'm going to tell you a couple stories throughout this. One of the first ones is one that's really challenging for me, but I lost a kid that was on my basketball team in between the junior and senior year. He was shot in Colorado Springs. I have his picture up to this day. I haven't got it up in Little Rock yet, haven't got all the boxes unpacked, but it'll be up. What it reminds me of is that kids need us 24/7. Because Sheridan was the type of kid that as an athlete and as a student, he was great when he was engaged. He had all sorts of things that happened for him where he benefited others. He made people better. But when he did not have that formal thing of having something for him, he took a different route because he was going to go find other people to engage with. And he ended up getting shot in Colorado Springs as a junior going into his senior year. Those type of things, and we all probably have something that we've heard or seen like that. It ought to motivate us to say, we do have an opportunity. We have an opportunity within all of us right now to go do something that's very impactful. Sometimes we think we're limited in terms of what we can do because we think, I'm just one person. How can I possibly have an impact on a school system of 23 to 25,000 students, depending upon which number you use with preschool and all those type of things? 25,000 kids. How can one person in here go have an impact? But I'm here to tell you, one person can. And why can't it be you? Why can't it be all of us in terms of thinking together on ways that we can make life better for our students? I'm going to try to demonstrate how we can maybe make life better through talking about transitions, because transitions are really critical for kids. When you think about it, they have all sorts of things that they go through in terms of intellectually and developmentally and social. And I'm going to try to highlight those things and try to highlight it through the use of the school system. Before I do that, though, I want to just share kind of a little bit of a thought process, and some of you have seen me use this slide before. It's kind of an interesting slide. If you look at the side over here to my, I guess I'll say to your left, the single line, that's the old school. That's how I was raised in school. Get in line. Make sure you stay in order. Now, the people in the front of the line, they knew how to be in the front of the line. And they were really good at it. Okay? But some of the people that were in the middle or the back of the line, they were walking along aimlessly. Look on the right side. That's our reality in education right now. It's a little bit out of control. It makes you feel a little bit unsettled. But that is the way education should be, because if you look at that also, one of the things I love about this picture is that kids are engaged. They're moving. They're having fun. They're doing things together. It's not static. And so schools nowadays are a much different beast than probably many of us grew up with, and we need to understand that. But we also need to understand that there is a set of research that goes into how things are right now. I'm going to go ahead and put all this up at one time. Hopefully I don't go too far. I think that's it. And this is research that was done by, a person that you'd probably most associate with it is Robert Marzano, but also Tim Waters. It was a research called Balanced Leadership. And so if you look at this, what it basically is saying that the 50th percentile is a year's worth of gain for a kid. So in an average school with an average teacher, a kid that comes in as a third grader, he's going to exit out as a fourth grader. He's right on track with his skill development. But then look and let your mind kind of race around through those stats. I'm not going to try to read line by line to you. But one of the things that comes out most clear that I want to make sure that I frame, because, Marianne's mom, teacher. Marianne, teacher. My dad's wife, teacher. There are teachers in this room. I want to honor the fact that a great teacher, no matter how screwed up the school is, the great teacher gets a year's worth of gain. Look at that. a highly effective teacher, and even when you have a highly ineffective school, they get more than a year's worth of gain, because teaching is where it's at. Okay, so I don't want to ever lose sight of that, and my speech, then I'm going to pull away from that and say, that's really not what I'm going to talk about, but I want to plant that seed because I know as my job as a superintendent, one of the things I have to do is make sure that we attract, retain, and then also deliver as high a quality of professional development as we can for our teachers, because they make the biggest difference. But I also know that within this slide, a highly effective school is a part of my responsibility. And that's about creating professional learning communities so that teachers can do collaborative work together, so that they can get proper professional development, so that we limit interruptions, so that we have a focus on academics day in and day out. And I threw this slide in based on the church speech that I did on Thursday, because Ms. Webb had set me up to talk at the Methodist Church, and a veteran teacher from Little Rock, she's probably in her 80s, I think her name is Miss Taylor. She came up to me and she said, "You did all these things and you talked about relationships and everything else, but you didn't say one word about teaching." I thought, well, by God, I need to get that into my slide deck to make sure, because that is really one of the most important things we can do. But that's us. Now, good news, and I'm going to try to be very transparent with you today. There's going to probably be some information and data that you're going to look at later on that's going to be a little bit disturbing and a little unsettling, because the only way that you can do this is to be real with the information that's there in front of us. The good news to start off with, though, is I get to paint a really good picture about early childhood education. Okay? Early childhood education in Little Rock is working, and this is really the start of the whole concept of what is it that we have as an opportunity of us. So in every category, and I'm going to show you some data, the Little Rock school system is performing extremely well. Look at this in terms of reading, in terms of the data. So this is first grade results, and you can see what happens in terms of the students who are on free and reduced lunch, or on free or reduced lunch or full paying. It doesn't matter that if they're in our preschools, they achieve better in first grade because they've had that structured preschool. That's a very, very powerful thing. Notice the consistencies of scores as I start to go through this in terms of just different things, of the gaps, okay, that are there. But what we're showing here is that if you look at full pay, those are probably meaning parents that may have already had all sorts of other quality preschool options. And they're educating their child in maybe different ways, but in the free and reduced lunch category, that structured preschool is having to come through the school system. And if it's not there, imagine what the gap is going to be. Look next at language. It's basically the same type of story. And then math, again, the same type of thing. So this early jump start in terms of preschool is really critical, and this is going to be really one of the first things then to share in terms of policy. This then aggregates the data to, again, clearly show that those that are a part of our structured preschool program, that's a part of Little Rock schools, we end up doing extremely well. So what is it that we can think about in terms of our reality? Our reality is that we know that if we get them into our schools, we can make a difference. We know that there's still things that can be done, and as an individual, I think there is a way that we can have an impact. This is a policy matter. It's an important policy matter. Where do you stand on this? Because right now, it's not on the radar of our state government to say, this is something that we need to fund. We have approximately 15,000 students in this state right now that could benefit from early preschool opportunities. 15,000 students that are not getting it, that are coming from backgrounds where they're economically challenged. Now go frame it into our state. We're 44th in our state. The state of Arkansas is 44th in overall child well-being. This comes from the Arkansas Advocates. And we have no conversation about funding for early childhood. Do you ever think about the difference between what it takes to pay for an early childhood education for a young person? It's a little over $7,000, give or take, to educate a prisoner or to house a prisoner. Now you're talking about $35,000 to $40,000. Is that not worth our effort in terms of us becoming that advocate? And you all have that opportunity in terms of what you get to do when you leave today to go and try to push for more things. Wraparound services. You know, we're in a place in this state that we need additional support for families. One of the things that I had my office in Denver was at an early childhood center, and it was the Head Start Center for actually 5 school districts. And this little child center for early childhood, one of the first things that I found out was they came and told me, we're going to come in and provide dental care. Now, I'm a high school guy. That's what I was. I was a high school teacher. So when I heard that we were going to provide dental care for early childhood kids, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, what kind of liability do we have? I'm almost ashamed to say that was the words that came out of my mouth. But do you realize how important dental care is in terms of the overall well-being of a child? And do we have those things in place? And I have to tell you, and some of this is a little bit rhetorical because I don't know all the answers yet about Little Rock in terms of what we can do, what we already have done. So I am positive there are things in place that are starting to do some of these things, but I'm also positive that we haven't hit it totally right to connect with every child. Nutrition. Again, speaking to Miss Kathy Webb, that one of the things that you're going to see this district do is partner with the Hunger Alliance. We've talked about that. That's something that has to happen to continue to support students that really need it. We need to have wraparound services. Right now, we're 38th in the state, 38th in the nation in education, 38th. You know how they calculate 38th in the nation? First, it's off high school graduation rates. If you go look at high school graduation rates, which I'll show you in a minute, high school graduation rates in Arkansas, we're actually not in bad shape on that when you look at it on a national level. So that's not hurting us. Our 4th grade and 8th grade assessment scores on NAEP, a national assessment, they actually have improved over the last several years. That's a positive stat. The one area that I think we can still do more to impact our education as a state is dealing with early childhood. How can we take that as an opportunity? You've got to think about supporting the whole child. In the state of Arkansas, we have 92,000 parents who do not have full-time jobs or employment. Now, I'm not talking about unemployment. I'm talking about just people that have jobs, but it's not like they work 8 hours. They might be working 5 hours here and 6 hours there. Now, if you think about that for then trying to raise a young child, the time that they're away from their home, because they're just working to try to make a living, to do everything they can for their child. And are there some examples where that's not occurring? Absolutely. But there is a lot of families that what they're trying to do is just make ends meet. And the combination of creating structured preschool with these wraparound services all makes perfect sense to me. And I don't see why we can't move forward with it. We need adult support to make that a reality. So, the final thing that I would share about early childhood, maybe take a step back. And I don't know if Bill Kopsky's here, but Bill Kopsky is one of the people that talks about policy. And he's framed this issue, a quote that we found is, this is not an education problem necessarily, it's a priority issue. Where do we want to put our priorities? And I hope that that rings through your head as we kind of continue through this slide deck. Where should our priorities be? I'm telling you that as a superintendent, one of the things that you will see me advocate for as one guy, but I hope that it becomes an us, is how do we make sure that early childhood expands in this state. And if it's really done well, and we really want to make the mark on early childhood, you're going to have these factors in place. You've got to have certified teachers, number one. And in Little Rock, we do. And I think that's why you saw the great gains that you saw. But we still have gaps in terms of the number of children that we could be serving that we currently aren't. And I think it's important that one about play, social development, engage parents. I think that's a key thing to think about too. How do we help parents become even better parents? And remember that a lot of the parents that are disengaged with public schools, they've had bad experiences with us from back when they were growing up. They were the kid in the back of the line trying to figure out why they didn't matter, why they were not engaged in some formal way. Middle school. Now, the middle school, I told Pamela, who helped with this as well, and I really appreciate Pamela and Barbara on my staff who are a part of this, it's like the Wonder Years. Remember that show? Okay, the Wonder Years. But how many of you remember raising your own middle school child? Or maybe some of you are raising them right now. I can remember my daughter in 6th grade. That in 6th grade, I wondered, where did this one come from? Who is this beast? In 7th grade, she was Sweet Jasmine again. In 8th grade, she was Holy Terror again. But if you think about a middle school child in terms of what they are doing and thinking and how they're developing, it is, as Mary Ann calls it, and she's a former counselor at the middle school level, it's the roller coaster years. They are up and down and all over the place. Now, that's the students. Have you ever gone into a middle school to see the staff? They're the same way, okay? They're all over the place too and all crazy and spastic, okay? And the principals, they're that way too. Mr. Robinson, am I correct? You gonna agree to that or not? He's gonna hold up. So the parents, you know, if you're a parent of a middle school child, you're kind of holding on thinking, again, just like I was, what is happening with this young person right now and what do I got to do? And really, you copied and forged my name with a number 2 pencil and thought you were going to get away with it? You know you can't be that dumb. But that is the middle school years. So let's go back into looking at it just in terms of data. This is one of the sorest spots that we have in the Little Rock schools. This is where we lose our students. We're losing more students to charter and private schools at this stage of development than any other place. And you know what's ironic about it is, then I can go to the next bullet and say, our academic growth, okay, and growth, what I'm saying is, again, it's kind of like that Marzano stat of here's where the kid is, here's where he ended up. We have more growth in that area. It's really positive. We want to be compared to others in terms of growth. Yet we have people leaving. And I think there's probably 2 things. And again, this may be a little bit of conjecture on my part, but I believe this is where I see things at this point in time, and some of you will probably help shape me on this. But I think one thing is, a parent, more than anything else, wants to feel like they have a safe and secure environment. That's one of the biggest things. So what do we do to make sure that they have that sense of security? That their child, that every teacher knows their kid just intimately, knows them beyond the classroom. What do we do to make sure that that parent feels like, boy, when I walk in, I get total respect, and then they start to brag about the school. There's that whole comfort level thing of safeness and security. The second thing that I think fits into this is that sometimes our public schools are not looked at as the shiny penny anymore. So, where are we at with our facilities? Where are we at with offering programming that makes parents say, I want to be in that school? Wow! Did you hear what's going on over there? Do you hear the science activities? Do you hear the things regarding business development? Mr. Rutherford and I just got into this really cool conversation. Man, when he said this, he's got me latched on to his leg, okay? Because he just talked about Hope, Arkansas is going to start a class for their middle schools where they're going to do something that is going to be related to public engagement. Can you imagine a public engagement middle school? And think of the opportunity to develop citizens and good deeds and thinking and collaboration and connectedness. That's pretty awesome. We took over a failing middle school in Colorado Springs where the school was taken over because of No Child Left Behind. You know who we used? We partnered. You don't feel like you can do it all by yourself. We partnered with the National Space Foundation. In Colorado Springs, there's defense contractors everywhere. So we would go take those kids on field trip, and the contractor would say, hey, do you realize that this is the software you use? And the kid goes, yeah, but we have 10.0, you're using 7.0. Because the Space Foundation had connected it. And you know what? These 6th graders could do it. They could do it. You have to trust kids, especially at the middle school level. So, what are the needs of a middle child? Now, this is so funny, isn't it? Seek independence and want connections. Isn't that kind of like, it's totally wrong? But again, think about that middle school child. He's always being kind of pulled apart by himself. Okay? Sometimes by us. He wants independence. He wants to be that independent guy or gal. He wants to have that level of confidence, say, I can do it, but then he knows he needs to be around people. But then he's frightened about being around people. I want to be by myself, but I want to be. It's that whole back and forth of what it's like. So these 2 words of what a middle school child needs, I think are really perfect. What is it that we can do? Kind of goes into what I've just been talking about, project-based learning. Now, those of you that own companies, I challenge you to step up right now and say, I want to create a project for middle schools, and I'm going to go give it to Mr. Robinson, one of our middle school principals, and let our kids go take on a project for your company. I'm talking a real problem, and let them go dive into it. Think of what they will learn. Science, social studies, literature, writing skills. It would all be combined into an output that makes them feel valued, but it also giving them a level of skills that get to go move forward. Real sustainable relationships. These kids at that age don't need people wandering in and out. If you're going to be a business, stay with us. Continue to be a face. You want to make a difference in Little Rock School? That's what needs to happen. Third, community projects. And I was really glad that I put this in because Mr. Rutherford brought this up at lunch too, and he said, it seems to make sense that if middle schools were involved in more community projects, that would kind of make sense. Because they get to go be physical. They get to go feel like they're being valued. They're getting to solve a problem. They're connecting with others. We need those type of things. We need mentors. We need after school and weekend supports, and then of course, summer camps. And I got to go to a summer camp today. I went to something called the Spark. First time it's ever been offered. And this one is for gifted and talented students in the Little Rock school system. Okay? And we're at Stevens Elementary, and it's amazing what was going on with those kids. I saw everything from computer coding to ballet dancing to product development of software for shoes, that they were designing new types of shoes, and these were all 4th and 5th graders. That type of interaction in the summer so that they don't have that gap of just things dropping off in the summer, we need to engineer and create more of those type of opportunities. So, the reality we seek, we want to have a confident learner, and more than anything at the middle school level, we've got to think about having a child that's Algebra 1 ready. You know, there's kind of a couple benchmark years in education. In 3rd grade, you want to have your students ready to read at a place where they actually can become learners. They have to have those skills in place. By 8th grade, you want to have students Algebra 1 ready. Do you realize that if a student isn't able to complete Algebra 1, isn't able to have mastery at that, their chance of post-secondary success is gone. So, how do you get students Algebra 1 ready? It goes back into all these things. You may say, well, how does that fit math? Let us get that connected to math with projects and summer camps and all those type of things to really make a difference for young people. Okay, I told you there's going to be some information that's going to be troubling. Here it is. This is our data for our high school. Now, these are students that are coming in as 9th graders. And look at it. This is proficiency. And this is where the tag of a distressed school system came on by statute. Okay? We've got to raise up the 3 schools that are distressed out of this level of proficiency in their literacy and in their math scores in order to move forward. Look at this in terms of graduation rates. And again, I'm going to be real with you. Graduation rates aren't where they need to be. Okay? You can see that our graduation rate actually dropped last year. And you can see down at the bottom of it that the state's graduation rate is at 84.5%, and it went up last year. So these are things that we've got to understand. It's not a good stat, but it's a baseline point of information. Again, hopefully a call to action for all of you to say, we've got to go do some things to step up right now. So high school targets, these are things that I think all of you would probably say we want to have. We want to have a graduate that's confident, ready to be collaborative, that is competent, has an eye to the future. They understand where they want to go, that they're connected, they're citizens. Those are all things we want to have. And as the diagram of a student kind of emerges out of the screen, you can see first off in Little Rock, and this I think falls on me primarily along with my staff, to figure out how we make the pipeline challenge of pre-K through 8 stronger, so that our instructional delivery, that we're really clear of making sure that we know what we need to do for kids. We need to create an engagement void between 9 and 12, so let me tell you about that. You know, when kids get into high school, as parents, we kind of say, oh, they're at a different stage of life. Let me back off a little bit. And in reality, we need to jump in even deeper. And staff needs to do the same thing. And community needs to do the same thing. So here's an opportunity for all of us. Why can't it be that whether it's with high school kids or middle school kids or elementary kids, that when we see a child, we say, what is it that you want to do when you grow up? Now, I'm going to take advantage of the story, and Pam already gave me like a time, like I'm starting to run out, but I got to tell this story. Had a parent come up to me on a 9th grade night, and they wanted to introduce their son, so they bring up Johnny to me, and I met the parents, and then I said, Johnny, how are you? And the parents are going. And then the next question is, well, hey, Johnny, I always ask this. Tell me what is it you want to, that's your favorite thing in school? I don't know. And the mom goes, tell him. And he goes, lunch. So, I know what I'm dealing with here. And I said, well, Johnny, what is it that you might want to do when you're 25? What would be your dream? A great job for you. And he goes, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. So tell me this then. What is it that you're most passionate about? And the kid goes, skateboarding. Almost like defiant. Take that, principal. Skateboarding. And you know what I said? I said, dude, do you realize that is a multi-billion-dollar industry? Oh my gosh, we have you set up. Do you want to get into engineering of the school board or of the skateboard parks? How about designing the shoes? What about creating Game Boys that you can do for PlayStations and Xboxes? You could do that, or you could design, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And all of a sudden, the parents are going, my son is a skateboarder. And the kid is going, oh man, I got work to do, okay? If this is what I want to be, I got something I got to go put into this. So it's all of a sudden a big game changer for a child. So what is it that we can do? And again, some of these are very familiar and similar. But I got to tell you, we're very lucky on some of this. Because, the mayor and our city manager, 2 gentlemen that I've gotten to meet with now, these guys have programs already tied into the city that we can connect to that are doing a lot of these type of things. Do you realize how many people how many of the students get employed by the city during the school year? Do you realize that there's outreach all over the place? Do you realize that Randy Zook of the State Chamber of Commerce has something called a Be Pro, Be Proud that makes career development exciting for kids? And I don't even want to ask Mr. Zook whether or not the Be Pro, Be Proud has even gone into the Little Rock schools yet. My guess, I already see it, no. We have not taken opportunities yet of how we can utilize things within this community to do some of these very things to make things better for our students. Now, if I skip that last bullet, some of you would probably say, okay, you chickened out and didn't mention anything about waivers. Okay? We have not taken advantage of that in this school system. Why can't we be innovative? Why can't we be creative in the public schools? Why can't we go design what we think is best for kids? Because I can tell you right now, our scores show that we do know what we're doing, but what we may be a little bit detached to is what parents are really seeking and what the business community is really after. And if we can connect all those things together with the expertise we have on our staff, and we use things like waivers, okay? A waiver. Bentonville was the first one to ever get a waiver in this state through the State Board of Education. And one waiver was very simple. Make it so that when our kids are out working in career development centers, that they're not boxed into a block of time like you do in normal school settings, because they're going to work well beyond it. And those kids are going to exceed every expectation. Why can't we do innovation status? The one in Bentonville, again, just my own experience, it might surprise you that the innovation status was based on trying to provide more for special needs children. Be innovative with it and get away from some of the roadblocks that are there that we should have access to, just like charters, or even doing charter conversions and making those a reality to better serve the needs of our child. So those are things that I think we can do. But I also want to finish with kind of my last big hurrah, and then I know Mr. Rutherford's going to pull me off, but is that, I do think the career development centers, and really I had 3 big targets when I was given this opportunity by Mr. Commissioner Key and the governor. One was to get local control back as quickly as possible to the school system. Second was to do it as collaboratively as possible. Hopefully you're seeing that outreach through this type of presentation and through future work that I'll do. And the third thing was to develop career development centers. It makes great sense to me, as I've talked already to people, we need a teacher cadet program. We have a shortage of teachers. What if we trained our high school seniors, juniors and seniors, to become teachers, to eventually fill that labor pool? In the meantime, they're able to go back and work in the junior highs and elementaries during the school year to help support intervention. It's almost like, duh, okay? And they get an older kid showing responsibility to a younger person. All that kind of makes sense to me, doesn't it? Medical professions in this community, big deal. That pipeline we've got to figure out how to sustain. And tech solutions, you always need more technology people. And that's a high skill thing. Because a lot of people, when they heard about career development centers, they thought that, oh, Mike Poore's coming down here to go make sure that we had people building widgets. I don't see our kids being wired like that. I see our kids being wired to do things that are creative and innovative and solution-oriented and things that they feel like they can give back. And who knows what our future will be. Some of you will help with that in terms of mapping that out. So, targets that I hope we all have. I hope we all have this idea that we ought to get up to 90% on graduation rate as quick as we can. That's not going to be easy, and it's going to take a lot of work. We're going to need to have our kids really ready to be post-secondary ready. It's not just about going to college. It's not just about being ready to be a career. It's about ready to be a good citizen, being responsible. So, as you think about today and the opportunity of us, and as I wrap up with my remarks and then answer some questions, I want you each to give thought to it. What is it that struck you tonight, this afternoon, about what you might be able to personally do to impact the school system, to impact a child in Little Rock? What is it that we can collectively do? What is it that we need to go push people that are in positions to make policy, to create legislation such as, increasing early childhood opportunities? I see Representative Blake back here shaking his head, so I know he's one of those guys that would want that to happen in terms of getting that type of support. Having people stand up to say, hey, now is the time. If we're serious about this as a state, let's get busy on it. Let me give you one final thought, though, that I want you to think about in terms of the opportunity of each of you. You get to leave here right now, and you have all sorts of things that you could go do, right? Because you're going to be able to you're going to go to the grocery store, you're going to go to the post office, you might end up at a church tonight, you might end up talking to a neighbor across the fence. So what are you going to say? What are you going to say about the Little Rock schools? Now, one thing you could say, because there was real data, is say, whoo, they are screwed up. But couldn't you also say, you know what? I see something happening right now. There were 200 plus people in the Clinton Center today coming together to say, what can we go do to make Little Rock a little bit better place? I saw a superintendent that says he wants to hear from us. I saw a superintendent that wants to reach out. I saw things that I could put into my own world to think about what was good for my kid, or maybe what wasn't so good for my kid, when they're growing up. And I think we need to think about how we invest. What do you do to go reach out to somebody today? What will that conversation be? Thank you so much for the time you've given me today. Thank you.
Hi. Some of our most successful and innovative programs currently in Little Rock School District are housed in our magnet schools. I know that the desegregation money is gone, so where do you see the future of some of those programs?
Well, and I appreciate you asked that question, because I think that those have been, the exact word that they were developed for, they have been attractive. They have brought people in, and they've made people really believe in those schools. So when you look at it in terms of, what are the possibilities, I think that first off, there are components of those magnets that need to be a part of every school in terms of having kids think and be able to create and do. But I also think that there needs to be a place where there is some of those things that allow parents to have some choice. The challenge behind it, of course, is transportation. How do we get through that? But I think that I personally think that type of choice is a positive thing.
The way we use test in some ways dominates our inability to see a richer, deeper conversation about what success is, about what intelligence is, about what achievement is. And so when you think about career academies in particular, it may well be that we're never going to get the kind of success, if you will, demonstrated by tests and psychometrics, that in fact comes through student work, student performance, portfolios, projects, internship reports, an array of things that we sort of look. So I worry that you're already sort of, if you will, bounded by this tyranny of psychometrics and so when we talk about innovation, what about pushing innovation into that sphere and space of assessment, where we deepen our definition of achievement, success, intelligence? I'd really like your thoughts about that.
That's a pretty deep question. So here's how I would respond. I appreciate you being here, Professor. A student is more than a test score. And we can all think about that, whether we want to look at it from us as an individual or our own children. We know that they're more than a test score. But we also know that one of the things test scores do provide us is a measuring stick of just what has happened during the course of that year. So I don't totally back away from it, and I think that there's value in some form of assessment. On the other side, what is it that we can measure in terms of preparedness? And I think preparedness comes in a lot of different ways in terms of interacting with people and how to collaborate. And I think that's almost impossible other than, what it is that they do in these kind of project-based environments of output that lends itself to being able to say, wow, this student is doing all the things that we want as a soft skill out in the adult world. And if we were teaching students soft skills in our setting right now in the K-12 world, then I think that's a pretty good outcome that we should be proud of. Final thing that I'll share with you is I have been working with my team to try to say, how do we maybe look at the whole thing of distressed schools, and just the name distressed schools, how sick is that? I mean, that's just a sad term to begin with, but distressed schools is a challenging word. Isn't there another way to do this in terms of utilizing data to better demonstrate where things are? So as an example, in an urban setting, almost any study that you would look at would say that if we got 2% growth on all of our achievement scores every year, we should be having a parade in downtown Little Rock for the educators and for the community. But that's not how we're measured. And so how do we move the needle in terms of the discussion? And I think that's up to us to come up with the plan. Okay? I think as educators, we should be coming in with a plan to the State Department to say, here's things that we can do maybe differently in terms of how we utilize achievement data to better serve. So I hope that is something that comes towards a person like Mr. Barth as a part of the State Board of Education.
Ready to recommend that we get our school board back by election? That's a pretty good question, Mr. Nunn.
The number one charge that I had coming into this thing from the commissioner and the governor was to get local control back as quickly as possible. The challenge behind that, and so the sooner that happens, the better, and my hope would be that when the local board comes back in, they say, we want this bald-haired guy named Mike Poore to stay on and keep on going with us. That would be my hope. What we have to do, though, is we have some data results that you can see there that we've got to deal with. And there's metrics that they're using, so we either have to come up with different ways to have us measured by or step up to those metrics to get us out of that get it back into local control.
You mentioned that in 2017 you want the career development centers to be up and running. I'd like to ask you to elaborate on that in terms of how you plan to execute. And secondly, as you and I have talked about the void of counselors in our schools, I think that's a critical issue. I personally think that's a critical issue as it relates to the issues of career development, and I wish if you could respond to that, please.
They kind of go hand in hand to some degree because a counselor, a good counselor, really projects and helps the student understand where all the future possibilities are. But one of the things, one, you can have counselors, but you can also have adults. It goes back into the power of us, of adults participating, business people being involved in kids' lives, and understanding that if we're going to have a career opportunity in technology, so let's just outline that one for a second. This does not have to be where we're pulling kids from all the high schools. Why can't it be a technology class? I'm talking about a high-level tech class that is operating at a satellite campus close to each of the 5 high schools in a business environment. The kids go there for 2.5 hours every day. And they're doing real-world problems. Okay? In Bentonville, there were one kid designed the website for Daisy BB Gun. Daisy BB Gun has an offshoot on fish and game and tackle, and the gentleman who operates that company, Mr. Hobbs, had tried for 4 years to get that website up. We gave him a kid from our Career Development Center, and the kid not only developed the website so that it had an application for business, but he developed an online point of sales. Our kids are coding. I just saw it in this camp. They're coding as kindergartners. My 17-month-old grandbaby grabs my phone, and she knows how that she has to push this button, she has to swipe, and she can move to get to the app she wants. Our kids understand technology, and that's the lowest hanging fruit we have in terms of a career development center. The teacher cadet, that can happen right there within the high schools. So these are things that I think can come at pretty minimal cost. They don't require a lot of things. The medical professions, I think we're going to have to work that out. But there are some really good facilities at Pulaski Tech, obviously, that we can use, and then also our own career center that we might be able to use to make that a better reality. I hope I answered your question.
I'd like you to touch upon is your staff on Markham Street. What do you see as their role and any changes that you see on how they're going to function?
I'm going to take a little bit of advantage on your question in that one of the things that did not come out in this presentation is we have an economic challenge, because that really wasn't my purpose, but I'm going to take advantage of your question. The economic challenge is that there's desegregation money that's going away, and the desegregation money is significant. $35 million that's just going, okay? And so when they built the budget, and this isn't just last year or 3 years, this is a history of using the deseg money for people. So Mr. Curris made a lot of really challenging, tough cuts. Some of them you probably all didn't agree to. And there are additional things that are going to have to be done within the budget next year to live within our means. And some of those aren't going to be pleasant either. But one thing that you can't do when you make budget reductions is lose sight of the fact of what's best for kids. And you can even add things into your budget and still decrease if it's the best things for kids. And I think you have to partner even more when you're going through these type of times to try to find solutions without in the community. And I'm not trying to say we ask for your money. I'm trying to say that we ask for your support and diving in many different ways that I've talked about here. So directly then into the central office staff, there have been a lot of reductions at that site. And of course, there's kind of multiple places where there are central office folks. There was a lot of reductions. We probably may have still another round of reductions to come in the upcoming year to just live within our means, which are not going to be easy cuts because, when you deal with people, you're dealing with your community too.
I know we've got a lot more questions, and I hope all of you will come up and visit with the superintendent, but let's give Michael Poore a very good round of applause.
Thank you.